Three. So we have any minutes, Liz?
No minutes, sorry.
Okay.
We do have a Form A for numbers 2 through 6 Christensen Circle. Mr. Terrell is here, the engineer, to explain what they're doing.
Come on down.
I think I have copies in front of everybody, and if you could sign those, I would appreciate it.
All right. I'm Bill Terrell. I'm the chief engineer, PLS for Chapel Engineering. The clients hired me to reconfigure these lot lines to more fit the occupation between number 2 and number 4. So we're doing basically a land swap between those two parcels, and since we're pushing the lot line out, we had to do the same thing for the number 6 in order to accommodate the frontage.
Could you, as you're saying that, could you be pointing?
Oh, so, I'm sorry. So Lot A is going to be transferred to number 2, which is the first triangle at the street.
Okay.
And vice versa, the Lot B in the back is going to be transferred to number 4. So the back lot is going to 4, and the front one's going to 2. And then further down the road, the Lot C is going to be transferred also to Lot 4 in order to accommodate the frontage. And then the back piece is going to be transferred to number 6. And number 6 says a no lot change at all, that it was an even swap. Lot 2 is transferring about 500 odd square feet to lot number 4, just because of the configuration and stuff. They all comply with all the frontages and setbacks and coverages. So it's all straightforward, and it's just basically a matter of land swaps. Since this is a public road, they all have adequate frontage. I believe it to be an A&R plan.
And,
Not that it matters, did it all stop because of the shed?
What's that?
Did it all stop, not that it matters, but did it all stop because of the shed?
It did. That shed and that wall up front, that wall was put in at very beginning of the subdivision, and it was never put in the right place. So they decided, and then of course they're occupying up to the wall on either side, so they want to, own what they're occupying. They actually moved that shed in order to accommodate this.
to the location as it appears here?
Yes, to this current location.
Make the motion approved required.
I second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We need you.
I need all of these. Bruce has got them my arm.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Do you guys want to do this afterwards?
Yeah, let's sign it.
Copies afterwards, and give them.
Sure,
Okay.
that's okay with everybody else.
Just one more here. They're gonna sign it. Are you taking them out, or am I holding it? They'll pick it up.
No, I'll take it. You want us to drop it off the house, he's going to report it tomorrow.
Okay. I knew there was an arrangement there somewhere.
What was this for?
Oh, that was to sign the, I'll put it with the paper copies.
Yep.
Next on the agenda is correspondence. In your packet, there's a letter from a resident. I'm not going to read it, but just note it in the record that we did get a letter from Ms. Hurst, Jody Hurst, and she had some comments about Mr. Collins.
Thank you. Thank you. You too.
We're comfortable that this doesn't represent a conflict of interest issue.
I don't think it, Mr. Collins was clear that his views represented himself and not the views of the board. And I don't think it was a conflict of interest. I think it was just Mr. Collins, Rick, expressing his own views. I've just cautioned people that when they go before other boards or and Rick did this. He said that it was his own views, but I just caution anyone that should you talk to another board or in public and things like that. And, everybody has a right to their own opinions. I'm not trying to censor anyone here, but just make clear that your views represent yourself rather than the board. I think we can just leave it at that. Does anyone else have any comments for you?
Mr. Chairman, for the Zoning Board of Appeals, their admin wanted me to make sure that if anybody has any comments on 155 Birch Street, for me to forward them along. Their meeting on Thursday night. And I actually do have a copy of the plan that was submitted as part of that application, if anybody wants to see it. I know it's just one of a bunch of hearings, but I thought it would bring it to everybody's attention.
Yeah,
I'd like to see it too.
I don't have to see it right now, but
Yeah, we can do it. So I'm not sure, there were some members that weren't here, and some that were. In 2003, the town was going to propose a zoning change in that area, and the property owner brought in a subdivision plan, which then preserved their R20 zoning. And the board did approve a 3-lot subdivision plan with a roadway, and the road was named Wharf Way, which is in the same place that it is shown on that plan. After the zoning change was made, it was actually retracted from that area. The lot line, the zoning boundary line was moved back. It was in CBD, and then they returned it to R20 again at a subsequent town meeting. So it's R20 today, and Merrill, engineer, was representing his client, and they brought in
No, I think if I remember
a
back then.
substantially larger project. There were condos there.
Okay,
Remember
that's-
that?
yeah, yeah.
It was 3 house lots, then it was, I want to say at least 15 condos, I think, but that's going by my memory, which could be sketchy. It was so
But I
long
remember it
ago.
was they couldn't get a septic system, because it
Right.
would be so far out of the ground.
Right.
I think that was the only thing in this,
And I think at the end of the day, the zoning board denied them because the project never got built.
yeah, I know the neighbors didn't seem too happy.
So all quiet on the western front, and now Mr. Reynolds, the current property owner, has applied for a variance with the zoning board of appeals
for this roadway.
for that roadway. I believe he actually calls it a driveway. Yeah, it says pursuant to 175-29, frontage variance for driveway into lot.
I guess, I'd have to look at it now after all the years.
So the existing right-of-way,
This is the guy with the truck.
they want to use the existing right-of-way that exists there, or the paper street, or,
What, the only thing that I know is that the planning board in 2003 approved a road called Wharf Way,
Yeah.
WHORF, like the Klingon from Star Trek, if anybody needs to know that.
no, does that stay in perpetuity?
I don't know. That would be a town council question. My thing is, it probably doesn't, because we have seen plans over the years, right, that a subdivision plan gets permitted in the 40s, and then it comes back, to this board, and the lots are this big, and so they end up you know, maybe using a portion of whatever road was there, and then, I mean, there are roads in this town that are just never gonna get built, because houses are now all around them, and it's not
Yeah.
But I hate to think that
feasible.
the zoning board, the planning board approves a site plan in 2003. It never gets built because it doesn't receive all the permitting,
A subdivision plan.
subdivision plan, excuse
And
me.
the basis for that at the time was literally to preserve their zoning. If you
Yeah.
submit a subdivision plan before the change gets made at a town meeting, you preserve your zoning. And that was the thought behind that, so they preserved their zoning and then came back with a site plan for the condos.
And then, but just doing that, approving that subdivision plan, then means that there's an access road granted in perpetuity through existence, through all dimensions, or whatever it works. I mean, that's what I'm trying to understand is.
Yeah, is it or is it not? I mean, it was for a 3-lot subdivision
Yeah, I mean, are we bound?
by the road.
By what this board voted in 2003?
That is something I can ask town council.
I still think it all kind of falls under that 2-year, we would have,
But that it never got, well, I mean, that's not true either, because we got subdivision plans out there that are,
I mean, Robbins Ave was a paper road that has existed for apparently 50 years.
and it
60
keeps getting
years.
extended and extended and extended.
Nothing is
And
ever.
all of those over there, the not Crabtree, the Crabtree Extension, and Robert English Way, and McHugh Circle, I mean, those were not all built within a 2-year time frame. I mean, I can ask if we can use town council, and I don't think there'll be a problem.
I mean, Robbins Ave. I meant, what's the one that Glen Point just did off Spruce?
Oh, was it Roslyn?
Rosalind.
Yeah, Roslyn
But-
was a paper road for a long, long time.
Yeah, so I mean, like, I'd be very curious to find out, like, what our limits are. And then, I guess, does that mean that they have the ability to use a paper road that was granted in 2003, that was never built and never finished being permitted, by right? I guess that's where I don't know how that works. The other question I have is that, did he mention at some point he wanted to do slab housing?
I don't know.
Can you do slab housing in New England? Or Massachusetts?
Yeah, it's still gonna be on the foundation.
yeah.
Yeah.
You could just backfill the foundation for it, so on top of
Is that, yeah, it's meant to go to a certain depth or something?
Yeah.
Slab.
it. The foundation, gotta be on top of the foundation. Load cross on.
Okay.
You can't just floor a slab.
There is a right-of-way there, too.
No, that's probably what's holding it, is the right of way would stay.
Yep.
Whether or not the roadway would stay, obviously they're gonna come back in if they're changing the subdivision plan.
From 1940. That was part of his application. If you can pass that down. You can take a look at it.
The other part was, my memory serves me right, he was one of the biggest advocates against that
Yes, he was.
at that time.
He was.
Now he's looking to build something that,
Was there anything ever on that land 60 years ago, 80 years ago, 90 years ago? Was ever part of the train system?
No.
Not that I'm
It was
aware of.
wild back there forever.
Do you remember where Kelleher Oil was?
yeah.
That it burned? That wasn't there, right?
No.
That was over on the other side.
It was a Keller book.
Yeah.
When the subdivision plan was approved, was this the access?
It was. And it was a full-size road, I believe.
Full-size road,
Yep.
meaning
It was
these,
according to the town subdivision requirements. So however large the road was supposed to be with sidewalks, or sidewalk on one side, I think.
okay.
Does the town own the rail trail?
No, I think the train owns, I think,
Yeah, the MBTA.
the MBTA owns it.
The rail trail?
I think they still own it.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
well, the state took it over, I mean, it was, New Haven, Penn Central,
Right.
Conrail, but the state owns all the rail lines in that area.
I didn't know, because it had been abandoned for a long time, I mean, 100 years.
I had that conversation with somebody the other day, though, that they just never, it doesn't matter, they don't ever give the land up.
I just didn't know if.
Yeah,
It hasn't been abandoned for 100 years, because there was freight service in there
Right.
into the 70s.
right.
Not down the Hanover side. I thought the Hanover branch was actually the first thing to go 100 years
I don't know, in the 70s, there was
no.
freight service, so.
Down
There was train
I don't know where it
service,
went.
there was train service down to Hanover, to the industrial park.
Okay.
Once it left Abington, I didn't know where it was going.
I used to go up there and see the freight trains running down. It was a Tedeschi warehouse that they served.
So on that plan, does that show tracks on the land?
Yep, the track's here.
Yep. Was it a siding that went through there?
Looks like it must be, huh? Kind of ends here.
I didn't know if there's any.
It's wet from everywhere else down
Yeah, I
beyond
guess
there.
my concern is, the question is, if it had at one time railroad uses, does that have any environmental issues?
Oh,
Probably not by now.
you mean like put coal, putting, load that kind of stuff.
Coal, oil,
whatever.
who knows what.
Yeah.
The creosote from the rails, ties.
Honestly, I don't know, but I'd just be guessing that they had to address that before they, because it's such a public, turning it into a trail.
I think Mr. Reynolds, back in when those condos, the larger condo project was before the zoning board, I think, actually had his attorney write a letter and ask that the Army Corps of Engineers look at the plan. I never saw a response from that. The board got copied on the letter.
So I don't think the rail trail went through all the conservation reviews it was supposed to.
No.
So I wouldn't assume anything.
And those tracks are sitting in swamp. So I guess our comment would be whether or not we're not certain whether the access is grandfathered or not, based on our ruling back. Because I remember back then, everybody was rushing in to do that.
Right.
And I didn't think of it as being a long-term thing. They all wanted to get under that zone right now.
Right.
Yeah, look at it afterwards.
No.
I'd like to believe he's got a, lack of better words, a hard time to convince the zoning board that he should be granted a variance. I don't know what his argument's gonna be.
It was iffy when they presented it the first time. It was kind of like, yeah, it wasn't really looked like they could actually do it. And then it just disappeared. I was sort of wondering what happened to it. They just dropped it.
I believe the previous owner donated the land
Oh.
to a charity. Or a portion of it, right, whatever they owned, I guess.
But still, I just, be interesting to see. I doubt they're gonna hard pressed to grant a variance for access.
Do you guys want me to send any comment?
If you're going to reach out to town council to seek clarification on that,
All right.
then that is probably something that we should
Yeah,
tell them,
That would be basically our only input.
that we're pursuing that.
Anything else on the ZBA agenda that appeals, that anyone's interested in?
No.
All right. Move on. Informal discussion, Rose Place update on wetlands permitting.
Okay. I think you guys remember Azu?
Good evening.
Who are you?
he's gonna,
That's fine. Just an informal to give you guys an update and to seek a little advice from you on where we stand. I don't know how many members were on the board when Rose Place was approved many years ago.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, but I didn't want to rehash things if you were familiar with it, but
Oh, for my
Some of
part,
us
I,
were, some we weren't.
yeah.
So it might be good
Not
to
these board members,
bring it
yeah.
up again, please.
Rose Place is a subdivision at the end of Wilbur Street. It was to extend at the end of Wilbur Street to add 9 lots. It was filed for, and without getting into the long and the short of it, there was a question regarding the end of Wilbur Street, whether the end of Wilbur Street was a public way or a private way. Wilbur Street was a public way, and then at the very end of the street, there was a little tail. And so the question was whether that was public and private, and it went through a few iterations with town council and what have you. And what the planning board did is they approved the subdivision and said it was up to the applicant to then prove that they had the rights of access to it.
Yes.
At that point, it was appealed to the courts by the neighbors, well, by one particular neighbor. It ended up there, and then it ended up going to land court. The land court eventually found in our favor. However, they also found that we had to file a registration case in order to register that little piece at the end of the street as being our property. So that's the plan that the zoo had done, and that's the end of Wilbur Street. It kind of came across here. That was the little tail piece. We had to file a registration case for lot number 346 and go through that with the land court. In order to do so, we had to probate 4 estates, which dragged on for quite a while. Through the probate courts, then we were able to go back to the land court. The land court had a trial. At the end of the trial, they closed the trial. It took 2 years to give us our decision in writing. So we ended up with that, and I have, this is for the board, just a copy of that plan and a copy of the deed that goes along with it. It's registered in the land court. So we own that piece, we got rid of that. Then we went back to the next step of resolving the other conditions on the plan to make sure we were good with everything. One of the problems that we had is that we filed with both the Abington and Whitman Conservation Commissions. We were approved by both towns. This took so long in court that the approvals ran out. We were required to refile and get them reapproved. We filed in Whitman, it was approved. We filed in Abington, and it was approved. However, it got appealed in Abington, and then subsequently got pushed up the line to DEP. Where it sits at the moment, we have tried to address all of the rest of the concerns that were on the letter. The zoo, I know, made some, addressed all of the comments, submitted them in, and had them reviewed. I let him talk about that instead of me. We met with the water department. We are approved for water. We met with the sewer department, and we're all set for sewer as well. Then, in talking to DEP on the appeal that's there, the DEP asked us to try to explore every possibility of eliminating wetlands crossing, because they felt that the changes to the environment were more substantial than any risk to public safety if we could come up with some other options to try to run before the planning board.
To cross the end of Wilbur?
Instead of going over.
Yeah, where's the other entrance? Is it off Davis Street?
Yeah.
It's off of,
Because he's just going, wait a minute, because he doesn't
Off
know
of
you were
Doris.
coming in off of
Off of
Doris?
Doris.
Doris.
yeah.
So it was coming in, because the road was how long? Road was 600, 800 feet?
the existing road was 7 and change,
Okay.
and then we were gonna extend off of that. Okay, so this,
Oh, so the road that you were proposing was over 700, and you were gonna go off of that?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
emergency egress went out to that other road.
Yeah, the main entrance comes off of Wilbur.
Yeah.
So the board wanted a second means of access to address fire safety. And so we proposed, and the board at the time waived the width requirement and allowed us to go to 18 feet on that secondary means of access. And that's what we did. And DEP and the people didn't have any issues before. It was already, as Bud mentioned, it was already approved through conservation, but that approval also lapsed because of the court, the court taking its time to make decisions. But then we went back to conservation, and then it went back to DEP.
And that's just the.
Refresh my
that's the
memory,
assessment.
wasn't that gonna be gated?
No,
Yes, 100%.
It shows you the whole, this is the subdivision back there, that's Wilbur Street, that's where we're coming across the wetlands.
Name and address. Wait, back up for that. I don't know who it is.
So,
Okay.
in our discussions with
Name and
DEP,
address.
we try to
Speaker.
figure out anything we could do as far as mitigation to try not to touch the wetlands, to see if we could do something. We
On
checked
this plan, can you point out the wetlands?
in, what's that?
They're all over the place.
I'm sorry.
Oh, they're everywhere?
They're everywhere.
This entire section right here is crossing the wetlands.
Okay.
This comes in from existing Wilbur Street. This is all uplands,
Okay.
okay? But in order to come in from any direction, we have to cross wetlands,
Yeah.
okay? They suggested we try to find some mitigation to discuss with the planning board to see if we could try to avoid having as much of a filling into the wetlands. With that, we met with the fire department. We talked about adding some added fire protection and some other things there. We actually got pretty positive conversation with the fire department. They said they would comment to the board until we actually filed something, and they were asked for comments. But it was a pretty positive conversation. And then we came up with the fact, or the thought, on here, this is just an 18-foot entranceway with a gate.
Yeah.
And the design just as a secondary access.
I can actually read that.
I thought
I
about
know,
putting
it's there.
an easement here at the end of Wilbur Street that connects to the cul-de-sac, and just doing an 18-foot wide gravel path that would bring to the cul-de-sac, just as a way of, if there was a problem, giving somebody an added loop. Again, kind of on the idea that this was a gated thing that wasn't going to be used unless it was a fire emergency. This would be the same thing that would run across the back.
So the neighbors, 'cause I remember a couple of neighbors showed up, but so they may have a different feeling about the gate if it's not going to be a gate. If it's going to be a main access to the road. That's what we're talking about, switching it.
I think he's
No, what we're
trying-
talking about
he's
is, we're
proposing
talking
to
about
get rid of-
eliminating,
He hasn't said that yet, but that's, I think, where he's leading to.
Oh, eliminating this whole thing.
Yeah,
eliminating
so now
that
there's
whole
one way
thing, and bringing the one-way in, but having a circle that comes around that way for fire protection there.
Okay, I see you.
That would eliminate all of the work within the wetlands.
Yeah.
And that obviously.
What about shortening the road?
Was it?
What about shortening the road?
It doesn't really help because the roadway, our problem
Yeah.
isn't really how long the roadway is in the property, it's that the roadway starts at 700 and change. We're at the end of the street,
Yeah.
so there's no way of, even if we shorten the road, it wouldn't make a difference. We're open to suggestions, we're just trying to find ways to,
Because I'm looking at space and there's no, but, I mean, it looks like like it makes sense. As long as they can get in front of every house with their, with their trucks. And I don't know if the neighbors back there are the same way. I mean, it's a lot different on the hatches propped behind them. It's all kind of hilly.
Yeah.
But if you recall, the hatches were the main driving position at the time.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
but on the other side of the property, just so you can see, I'm just trying to reach over and point those way, where we come in here,
Yeah.
this is a vacant piece of land, and then all of this is vacant, that's actually town of Abington over here. So, other than the gravel road that comes behind here, to make the circle,
Yeah.
it really doesn't affect. And I was thinking that most of all the neighbors that came, in larger position that were down in here, now there would be absolutely nothing, and there wouldn't be a way that came by them, or, I would think they would all see it as an improvement.
I don't think so.
And again, we're happy to work with the fire department. We talked to them about adding some fire hydrants from what was originally proposed and a few other little mitigating things that they seem to be happy with.
Will adding that, if you added that second road back there, does that property still conform lots 3 and lots
Well, what I drew on that is I just drew it as a,
thing?
I just,
Right.
yeah, you can see that's me.
I know it's not mentioned out of this.
But the idea of that was just that it was going to be an easement. There's already an easement under there for the sewer line.
Oh.
The sewer line comes here and comes back out. So that was going to be an easement across the lots. If need be, and we really had to, we could, there's a lot of land, it's just that land's in Whitman.
Yeah.
And we're trying to keep everything in the town of Abington. So the houses would all be in Abington and get tax money over here instead of in
Do you have
Whitman.
anything from DEP in writing saying, try to do this a
Oh,
different
yeah,
way?
oh, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
oh, yeah.
As a good provider,
100%.
Okay,
I can email it to you.
okay, that sounds good.
If it were my choice, and the DEP would just sign their name, would be done. I'd be happy with that, but, you know, we told them we'd explore everything we could. And then after sitting down and talking to them, that option actually looked like the best for the environment, best for most of the neighbors there. The neighbors on Wilbur Street obviously have a subdivision behind them. Either way, they're not going to like it, but the other way, it was just emergency access anyway. Any of the traffic or any of the people going by was still coming down Wilbur Street. So I think that's,
How many feet total?
how many feet in total? It's
So,
from
if you added,
here,
let me answer that question.
Thank
If you
you.
added, at the end of the existing road is 765. So then you add another 250 to the cul-de-sac.
So almost.
Be over 900,
About
over 900,
It'd be about
1,000, 1,000 feet?
Yeah.
but that's from Brockton Ave.
That would be for
That's what I'm
123.
saying.
From
That would be for
Brockton Ave.
123 onward, yes.
As long as the fire trucks don't have to park at the top of, up by Wilbur and have to
No, they wouldn't have
carry the
to,
hoses down,
because,
so.
because Wilbur,
Yeah.
we're extending that width of Wilbur.
Yeah.
So that conforms to the actual layout. And I was talking to Bob, maybe we can also add an extra lane, if you will, within the layout, so that almost like what you do with an industrial park, where you have a wider entrance to come down, so that even if a car is parked out, they can still.
You get around it, okay.
So you're not coming indoors at all?
Hmm?
Is that what you're trying to eliminate,
Yes,
Norris Drive?
yes,
Okay.
yes, yes. I do have that letter from DEP. I mean, they even sent us to NEPA.
Looks like it might be difficult
Said,
cornering.
"No,
Okay.
you have to show us that you can't do anything else."
It's-
But no matter how you come across and bring another road, you're gonna cross wetlands. And somehow, the DEP is adopting, if you will, some of the MS4 language from EPA. And they look at wetlands as part of the waterways of the United States, so.
So isn't the town of Abington?
Hmm?
So isn't the town of Abington?
Right, so it's almost like they're saying, yeah, talk to the board. As a matter of fact, I spoke with Dan Gilmore. So Dan Gilmore is now the wetlands section chief at the Southeast region. He said that, as well, I always like your plans, you always a straight shooter, but we are now pushing to avoid wetlands filling.
Pushing towards what, sorry?
They're pushing everybody to avoid. So they have what they call now, their mantra is avoid, when you cannot avoid, minimize, and then mitigate. And so we can avoid here. So, and quite frankly, it does not, in terms of what they would have considered under the Wetlands Protection Act as a limited access project. The pure definition of a limited access project is that you don't have any other way of entering your property without crossing wetlands. Obviously, coming down Wilbur Street provides that access. And then you said, try to work with the planning board and see if there's anything you can come up with. And I'll send that letter to you next. that one of one unfilled.
I guess one question I have is, again, similar to what we just talked about. Is there anything from the previous proposal that we have to adhere to? Or is this gonna be all starting fresh?
I would say it's all starting from fresh, because you're eliminating this whole, I mean, that's a major amendment to the plan, taking that second means out.
Well, our thought was that we'd file a major modification to the subdivision
I
plan.
mean, they're
that's approved.
eliminating the whole second access. So
I
it's
know,
up to you guys how you
but-
want to, how you want them to
But
submit
again,
it.
this was approved when?
Yes,
It was approved when, like 2005, 2006?
2009, I believe.
9? So for a tiny mitigation, they did have to go to land court.
Yeah, but it never got built,
No.
and it's been 14 years.
Yep.
I mean, I'm trying to understand why we don't just start from new, like, why wouldn't we just start from new? Because it's been 14 years, it was never built, none of the permits are still standing. So,
All the drawings are done.
If I can answer that,
yep,
where we are right now, we are currently in an appeal with DEP. They're asking us to see if we can have a modification from the planning board to see. If not, then we would, then assume we'd continue on through DEP and continue on to the board with the already approved plan. We've been operating the whole time in good faith on this, trying to, but we have our same thing like our water and sewer approvals. The water approval, one of the reasons we had that is that the water department, specifically in their grant money request, named this subdivision as one of the ones that were awaiting water. So they granted us water access. If we were to start over from scratch and everything else, then they might deny us water access. So I think we'd want to continue along the path of where we are and look for a modification. It could be a major modification because that would have, again, all the
I
neighbors.
think the
and
water
notifications.
department would understand if, because you're eliminating such a large chunk of the plan. You know what I mean? I don't think they take away your water permission just because you were revising your plan and making a new submission.
Well, I'm agreeing with you on the revising the plan and submission.
Well, I mean, a
It's
new
just a
plan.
brand new filing from scratch, I think puts them in a
Right.
position that,
I think if this board wrote a letter to the water and the sewer department saying, you know, we felt it was important that they submitted a new plan versus an amended plan, but we don't want them to lose their water and sewer privileges, I think they'd be okay with that. I mean, we all work pretty well together. I mean, if that's what the board wants, which is sort of what he was talking about.
was it 2009 plan for, was it 9 units?
yes. Yeah, it hasn't changed, nothing's changed on the plan from 2009 other than addressing the comments of the engineer in the approval letter. And Azu made those changes, resubmitted them, and had them reviewed.
It looked undevelopable, but, and for us, the only issue was originally, you had to prove to us that you were crossing over a land you could actually cross over. We didn't care, you know, whatever, but, you know, someone's got to prove it. That's what you've been doing all this time. And the other one was that getting a second way out of there. Those were the two criteria. All this drainage, nothing really came up out of any of this.
We had a long conversation about the second access being gated. And
Right, and if you recall, when I say last year, it's not 2021. I gotta remember, we're in 2023. In 2021, this was sent back to the your review engineers at PMP, and they sent back a letter saying that we've
I gotta be honest with you, Azu, that plan sat and sat and sat for like 1,000 years, right? And then, you know, 10 years later, just maybe it felt that way, you email me and say, hey, look, I got a revised plan. So it goes off to PMP, and then sat in here for every meeting for another God knows how many years. And I have finally filed it under maybe someday, right? I have a lot of maybe somedays in there. But I mean, so I mean,
Make a suggestion. for you.
legitimately, you're asking me and them to all go, back to 2003, 2004, 2009. You know, that's a long time and a lot of plans ago. I mean,
Oh, no,
this was
but-
gonna be a 5 or 10-minute conversation,
Yeah.
otherwise,
Yeah.
I would have hauled out
Oh,
all the
no, no,
files,
no,
and they
no.
could have seen
Oh, no, not
the
at
whole etiology of
Right.
what got us to today. I
Right.
mean, I'm happy to do that at another meeting.
No, all I'm saying is, a major modification will still constitute paying the fees, will still constitute publishing it, will still constitute notifying all the abutters. So the only thing that we're trying to do is preserve the basic.
I mean, I have no dog in the fight, because I'm just gonna process the paperwork,
Yeah.
but you're eliminating an access,
May I make a suggestion?
and you're over 600 feet, I mean,
So the last comment was the same comment Rick had, and we were gonna get an opinion from town council. Legalities, I personally don't have a problem with the subdivision we approved back then, but legalities, does all the hoops he had to jump through hold his place in line? Can we get an opinion? I think the bigger question is whether or not we're gonna be willing to get rid of the second access, being 1,000 feet in. We don't normally do that. Without seeing what DEP had to say, I guess you could make a case for preserving the wetlands maybe, and I don't know. I don't know if I'm there yet with getting rid of the second access.
6, 7, 8, 9.
I mean, it's all the same as that other subdivision, same but different. And
So I can-
I would think because all the hoops they jump through, I'm not a lawyer, but their time frame would have got extended out, but I don't know. So it's a good question.
oh, I think
Town council.
the plan is still okay,
Yeah.
because of all the stuff they had to do.
Right. And
And they can legitimately build this plan, but DEP is asking them not to build this plan.
Right, and if that's the case, I would feel it's just a modification, but it's a pretty big modification. Obviously, these guys don't want to be here unless they had to.
The only argument I could say about that turnaround road over there is, the proposed one, is that it's still a single road access. If Wilbur becomes blocked,
Exactly.
they will have another way to get in there.
Yep.
But the access, I don't know, just seems like a dream, because someone's got to maintain that thing. It just seems like it will overgrow itself eventually.
The distance from Wilbur to where that split would be is just after the 765, so probably 775 feet before it comes to that little, where we started. Just my little red bit coming into the street. And again, our limitation is that's where our property starts. We don't own any property or any other way, other than going through the wetlands on there. So the thought was if we did the maximum mitigation, we could prove that somebody coming down, these houses right now already are there at 700 and something feet. The distance, the longest distance someone would have until the split would be 770 or 780 feet, and then they'd have a loop around. So it's not as much as 1,000 or 1,200 feet or what have you, if you go down to the, I think the zoo was giving you 1,000 feet down to here, once you come into the turn split. But again, we'd also add in some mitigation there and through that we talked about with the fire department on some extra fire safety plans and other things.
Fire stations?
What was it?
I thought they didn't put fire stations anymore. The pole-mounted stations?
No, I said that we discussed with the fire department.
Oh.
Fire hydrants.
Fire hydrants, okay. So I was just trying to see as you...
I didn't think you had an accent, that's why he couldn't understand you.
Well, we finally hear him. We're tuned into him.
I do find it funny, since we're trying to listen to him and you know exactly what he's saying. What accent is it?
You got used to mine, not his.
Do you guys want to take it under advisement, I'll email
Well,
town
y-
council.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you guys can pop by the office if you want, I'll pull the plans,
Yeah,
the files, and you can go through the files and see where everything sort of landed.
yeah, the history of this is unknown
Yeah.
to me, so I'm kind of,
I mean, Wilbur Street's a tough street to begin with, it's narrow, and now you're adding, making a bad street worse. Obviously, the end of it's gonna be better than that.
And the neighbors didn't anticipate this. Right?
What was it?
Well,
Being
just
used as a
keep
primary
in
way.
mind though,
Well, the neighbors did anticipate being used as a primary way because the other way out to Doris was gonna be gated and just a
Okay.
secondary
Right.
emergency access. So all the neighbors on Wilbur would have the same amount of traffic as shown on the plan, and the ones at Doris would be happy in that there's no secondary way that's coming off of it.
and incidentally, just throwing it out there. The length with the cul-de-sac from 123 to the terminus of the subdivision will still be shorter than what the length that you will encounter going to the existing Doris Ave. Right, so in essence, yes, Doris is existing, but we're actually gonna be shorter with the cul-de-sac than you have from Wilbur going to Doris.
Still another way in and another way out.
Right, and Doris doesn't have another way in and out, just that one way. And they don't have a cul-de-sac at the end.
Yeah, this whole subdivision is old and
Right.
tight, and, yeah.
It's been a good discussion tonight, bringing everybody up to speed, particularly our new member, our new old member.
that's right, I should remember this, huh?
Is he sort of the place?
That was after I left the first
Exactly,
time?
left the first time.
That's right.
All right.
Well, I do appreciate you guys letting us come in tonight and at least bring you up to speed on where things are and having an idea of what's going on.
I would be interested in seeing the mitigation that you offer the fire department too.
Yes, oh, that would definitely be part of any filing. I don't know if you want us to send something in advance or any of that, but I'm
You
happy to
could
do
send me
that.
one, yeah, just like a rundown of what your conversation was with them, what mitigation you offered, and if you can send me the deed,
Yes.
I'll make sure they all get a copy. Who
Fantastic.
has my email address?
Yep.
And if you'd like, I have the subdivision plan on the computer. I could send it to you if that's
That would be
easier,
great.
that you could forward that to members so they can see what it looks like.
Yep, that'd be great.
And then last but not least, that's just a copy of the land court
Okay,
plan.
fabulous.
Azul, the only thing, I would see it as a complication, that back alley there really doesn't accommodate anything other than the fire department if they need it, but I would think that when it comes time, if that, we've got to go through with that, I would think it have it made so we could turn around
Yes.
right there
Yes,
and make sure that other circle's the right size.
yes. I can push that over a little bit. This is just to say that, hey, this is what we're likely considering.
I don't want them to get tied here,
Yes.
because actually we're only looking at, is eliminating a second entrance, is the place small enough that it, won't hinder it. It's always a little bit for that. Worst scenarios probably ever happen. All right, I guess we'll decide.
Okay. Well, very good.
Okay.
Wish you all a
Again,
good-
thank you guys for having us
Happy New
in.
Year again.
Thanks, Cynthia.
New Year.
Yeah, good luck.
Great night.
Too tight.
Are you settled?
Can I steal this?
Yes, you
Because
can.
you laid it out, thank you.
She just did it, so it was to help her out, to try to, it went so far, to try to help her.
Do you want to do budget hearing?
Let's do the budget hearing. Next item on the agenda is budget hearing, January 18th, 2023, 7:15.
I know you guys are interested in pursuing a town planner. It is included in the budget, but as I already explained to you too, the town manager has different ideas. So this is the budget hearing before the finance committee, so I'll be going to do, the dog and pony show that I normally do.
Different ideas, how to pay for it, or what the town plans to do?
No, his thought is to package projects the board wants done, and we hire a consultant to do them. And that way, you get a scope of work, the work gets done, and we're not paying, you know, for a full-time employee or a part-time employee with benefits,
So
et
is there
cetera,
going
et
to be
cetera.
monies donated to hiring consultants?
I think he thinks that for the same, I think one of his fears is that for the salary level that he can put into the budget, which is in the budget, and it's $70,000 or $80,000, that you're not gonna be able to hire somebody. And Rockland is already having difficulty hiring a planner, and that Hanson is having trouble hiring a planner. That being said, he thought for that same amount of money, or maybe possibly less, we could get some projects done, like the mixed-use zoning on Route 18, or downtown development, or, so everything you guys sort of sent me, I gave to him.
So that just kicks the can down the road.
Yeah, and we'd have to develop, I'm gonna say the word syllabus, but we'd have to develop something for that project to be, we can't just say, here, go.
Actually, they can provide a scope of work. That's how we've been sort of working on, I want to say, like the affordable housing stuff.
See, something like this, I'm glad he came here, but this is the stuff I would love to go to a town engineer and sit down with them and go, what do you think? You know,
Right.
before I get wrecked, before I spend all this money on the board.
But that's a town engineer, that's not a town planner. And a town planner is not necessarily an engineer. So, I mean, a lot of times, communities will have town engineers in their DPW departments, right, to maintain their sewer and water and all of that. And work on the roads and planning. So,
So this consultancy approach,
mhm.
do we know that consultant exists? Is there already a notion of where that would go? Would that have to go out to bid, or how would that?
Depending on the project. Scott knows several consultant firms from other work he's done in other communities. One group we've used a couple of times that did this building and the library roof, which doesn't make them planning
Right.
experts, but part of their work is planning stuff too, is Habib and Associates. And then there's another one, Barrett Group. But literally, we went out to bid on the hazard mitigation plan update, and we probably had 4 or 5 consulting firms respond.
Okay.
The Barrett Group, Jimmy Barrett.
Yep. I mean, OCPC would be eligible, you know what I mean? So there'd be a lot of different people who would be eligible. I understand what you guys are saying, that's why I'm just saying, you can go make your case at the FinCom. Scott will be there, I'll be there doing the regular budgety stuff. That's a professional term, budgety. And you guys can go and have your conversation with them. And it won't be me regurgitating what everybody's saying, it'll be from your, so you can all go, I just need to know, so I can post a meeting, or you can vote to send representatives, it's completely up to you how you guys want to handle it.
If it's okay, I'd like to go. I've done it in the past. I'd like to go again.
Okay?
One thing I've had in the past that was helpful was basically a list of everything that a town planner would need to do in the next 2 to 3 years. And it was a very lengthy list. I don't know if it'd be possible to pull together something similar for this meeting, just to show like, this is work that has to get done, and it's gonna get done by somebody. Whether or not it's Scott or you or someone else, someone has to do this work. It might as well be the town planner, because that would be.
All right, well, you guys are coming up with that list, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because it's,
But for instance, it's the
Because
air,
if-
it's air-based stuff. It's talking with the water department about where that whole thing stands. It's Route 18 redevelopment, it's Route 123 redevelopment, it's zoning review. I mean, all those little pieces. It's like, this is stuff that has to get done. Someone's gonna do it.
yep,
The argument is that we'd rather have a town planner do it than a mishmash of consultants and employees and everything else.
all right, so if you guys all want to send me your long-term thoughts,
Yeah.
I can give Rick or, and CC Rick on it or whatever.
Actually, I thought we had done that.
I did, but it was from you and from Rick.
Okay.
So those were the, I mean, and I'm happy that's included in the budget already.
You would never take, I'd love to find a personality or like Dave is for us, is just so well versed and knows what, but he's retirement age, so he doesn't want to.
David
I know he's done.
David has said that he's retired.
He's retired and he takes special cases.
But somebody that does more than we just ask them, they do their job, they don't, we asked them for 3 things, we didn't know we had to ask him for 5 things, and he would take care of those other 2 for us.
I've known David for over 40 years. You can't get that kind of experience.
I mean, if you don't hire an engineer, you're still gonna have to send the plans out to be reviewed by an engineer. So we need to remember that too, because that's a lot of technical stuff that sometimes planners want engineers. I mean, they can look at it and say, that road is too long for us, and they can do a, little rough justice, as Judge Judy would say, on the plan not conforming to our bylaws, but as far as the technical stuff would go, they would still have to review that.
Well, I work for consulting firms, and it's always been the battle between engineers and planners.
Mm-hmm.
And the engineer will say, well, I've got my ASC, my engineer's stamp, and the planners would say, I've got my AICP, and
It's 2 different things, like planning is really the overview, right? Long-term, this is what we want it to look like, and this is where we want the community to go. And the engineer is the road gonna be constructed appropriately, is, too much pavement, blah, 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 right?
Do we have any indication that Dave has an end date for what he does for us?
No, but I would think it's probably gonna be sooner rather than later.
Well, and I think that's, Dave, perhaps obligation is too strong a word, but Dave has a responsibility to let us know.
He does, and.
Because if he decides tomorrow, we get a letter tomorrow saying, I'm all done, then we're kind of in a bad place.
Well,
We're scrambling a little bit.
we
Whereas
do
our,
have a backup, which is an engineering firm we've used for years, PMP. And the reason we stopped using them was a personality conflict, but that person is not around that much anymore, and
okay,
we might be able to use a different person there.
PMP is an affiliate of a larger engineering firm now.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
okay. Well, as long as we have a fallback.
I mean, if we were in a jam, and then Beals and Thomas we've used before as well.
All right.
So we do have a couple out there. Dave's the path of least resistance and the easiest. He and I have a great working relationship.
The turnaround has always been excellent.
Right. So
Okay.
that's a bridge I don't want to push. I hope you don't ask, so you don't know, you're okay. But I think this year might be the year in my head. Randy's spending a lot more time retiring.
Good for him.
Yeah, and it's been slow. We haven't gotten any new projects now, according to Attorney Riley, that's gonna end next week. He's dropping off a few things for us,
Okay.
so. But in the meantime, I'll pull that file and send an email to town council, and anybody who wants to come in and look at it. And I apologize for my conversation with Azu, but it was very frustrating for me for a long period of time, because years would go by in between, oh, can you look at these 2 things I added because we got court approval? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So I would leave the file.
I knew you had history with them, so.
And it was just, and I love Azu, don't get me wrong, it's just this project was not
So
an easy
the
lift.
budget hearing is where?
It's here,
Okay,
it's in person,
all right, and that's open to,
it's open to the public, but if you guys are gonna, if there's gonna be more than 2 of you here, I need to post it as a meeting.
well, I'd like to attend.
Okay,
Yep.
Day is,
it's a Wednesday.
But I got to go back and see if there's something else going on that evening that
All right.
I've already committed to.
So you know what, I will post a meeting, and that way, if 3 of you show up, nobody's committed right now, and if you want to come, you come, if you don't, you don't.
Okay?
All right?
Yep.
That's easy enough.
next thing we're gonna move on to is discussion of proposed zoning changes, the green canopy protection, battery storage, battery energy storage, green LID amendments, being prepared by consultant.
All right, so the green LIDs I don't have yet. They promised to have them to me before the end of January. And what those are a result of is the MS4 stormwater management. That mostly falls onto the DPW. They have reviewed our zoning bylaw, our conservation bylaw, and our subdivision rules and regulations, and have made suggestions. I think we talked about this last fall. I gave you the grid of suggested changes, and what the board decided to do was to move forward with the zoning changes for April, and the subdivision rules and regulation changes in the fall. So you're not trying to do everything at one point in time. So the consultants that are preparing those will have those before the end of January. As soon as I get them, I'll send them out. They'll definitely be in your next packet. Because you sort of know what they're about, I didn't think it was a big deal that we don't have them yet. And we have to have a public hearing with them anyway, so, with all of them. So I guess what I need to know from you guys is what you want to move forward with to the town meeting. The warrant is now open, I think, or they're opening it. Yeah, they opened it in December, right? And we have the bylaw from Rick that he submitted at our last meeting in November. And then I sent you copies of what town council sent, which were the 3 different battery energy storage bylaws from Montague, Oxford, and Hubbardston. I also left you tonight the PowerPoint presentation that I think Hubbardston did. And I'm gonna see if that gentleman can come in and do a presentation on battery energy storage in February.
I know there's one thing, one word's missing from everywhere in all this package. They run electric generators, and those things are loud, and they're smoky, and they smell. They run all the time, and you can see them in the pictures, but no one ever talks about the generators. You talk about battery storage. And I'm just kind of wondering why they're avoiding that.
So I guess I don't need to know tonight which one you want to do, if you want to listen to the if you want to do any of them at all. I did send this to the fire chief, and you saw what he wrote back. I gave you his. So I'm happy to, whatever you want to do. You can wait till February to make a decision on which bylaw, if any, if you want to move forward with. So you can hear the presentation on how it all works.
Were you looking at the trees, Rick?
Yeah, that's the green canopy one.
Okay.
And again, if the board doesn't want to do it, just say, don't do it, and we'll stop bringing it up. But if we want to do it, then I'd like to just start to finalize it. I just feel like the way it's currently worded doesn't do what we want it to do. I feel like it's an older version of it that doesn't reflect the changing view in terms of minimal impact development, and it has a preference towards decorative street trees rather than mature hardwoods, high canopy trees, things like that.
Well, I was trying to remember the trees they put in the parking lot out here are dying.
That's a lot of different species.
That's the thing, you're putting in these, and they don't live very long, and they're soft.
So again, my thought process is that the way it's currently used is if you go to Jean Carroll Road, or go to, what's the new one that we just did over by Woodsdale?
Century Estates?
Century Estates. Those are basically where clear cut the entire lot, and then you plant 2 trees on the very front edge, and you call it a day. And I don't think that's what we want to be encouraging as our default in our bylaw. So instead, I want to give them a couple options, which is, you still do the street trees if it makes sense, but I think we'd rather have a higher canopy of, I think we want it more to look like Summit Road, or Colonel Hunt Drive, or, you know, something like that, where you have these higher canopies
Yeah.
of hardwoods, kind of a mixture of different trees. And at least the developer needs to come in and make its case as to why they want to do it this way. I think that's kind of the point. It's like, all right, here's a standard, and we can tinker with the standard. But, you know, if you want to come in and make an argument as to why this, you have an alternative plan that makes sense, cool, we'll listen to it. But,
It always seems to be the very last thing anyone thinks about when they come here.
right, and it's the low effort plans that really annoy me. And a lot of the plans are just, all right, street tree, street tree, street tree, and it's just no thought about anything else. So I'd like them to start actually thinking about what they're doing. Do I need to take down this tree? Do I need to take down this
I think we should.
100-year-old oak with a 4-foot diameter? No? Well, all right, then I'll leave it up. And that's what other towns do. I know other towns do this. They have to go out and they have to find out where all those big trees are and tag them and say, you're not taking this one down.
Who's gonna do that?
They're consulting.
Tell them they're not gonna do
I'll
that
go walk the
either.
site. I mean, I'm just saying that I know in other towns that they're fanatical about, let's take a look at every big mature tree and make sure that this really needs to come down.
I don't disagree with you. I know those towns. Do you know who does it? And I'm
The
really
sur-
not
the
being
sur-
facetious.
The survey or the towns.
Who goes out and, does the surveying?
Yeah, it's part of the surveying, and then, you know, our consultant would go through, or we'd go through and I walk through and just say, all right, make sure that everything's there.
So our engineering consultant could, when they do their site walk? I'm not being
Yeah.
facetious, no, I'm just trying to get straight in my head.
I mean, that's up to the developer to come up with a plan.
Right,
Not that they were required, but that, the 40B over on Summer Street, they went to great lengths to save, you know, they fenced them all off when they were building it, and that was on them, that wasn't part of, but it's a good idea.
In our
Gives
case,
the developer something to think about, but at the end of the day, once the subdivision's built and it's occupied by homeowners,
You can cut them down.
cut them down.
Yep.
That's the other flip.
and I remember very well the couple that came in here and said, we don't want the street
Yeah.
trees, we're gonna cut them down as soon as we plant them, and
You can control.
that's fine, you can't force people to keep
Control
trees.
it.
Right.
However,
right.
But there's some subdivisions I've been in, they keep the stretch of woods in between the houses, which I personally like, but
Yeah,
it doesn't always work that way.
yeah, again, I want them to put in the effort to figure out what works and not just say, we're clear cutting everything.
With that particular one that we were just talking about, they went and clear cut that before they even came.
Yes. And you can't do that now under our new stormwater protection rules.
Right.
And the stormwater protection rules specifically talk about preserving as much as you can.
Right,
So I think adjusting our bylaw reflects that. And again, I'm very willing to say, all right, these numbers that are in here can be fudged around, we can move them around, we can figure out different ratios, but I think the current language doesn't achieve the goals we want. And that's why I've been putting this forward, or something similar to this.
all right, I have a quick question for you. On number 4, where it says the permit granting authority, does that also mean the zoning board of appeals?
I mean,
Or
the-
conservation, not so much conservation, but most of that stuff comes through here, but if it's a single-family home, I'm trying to think of some other, like.
Means something that the building
Something that
inspector.
wouldn't come to us, but would go to, like, maybe the zoning board of appeals, or they've torn down a house. You know what I mean? I'm just trying to think of different scenarios.
This wasn't geared to its single, this is geared to its.
It's
subdivision.
Yeah, multi-family
subdivisions.
Site plan.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
And I use permit granting authority because I think that's what the language is used in other documents.
Do you want me to send this to town council and have them take a look at it?
Sure.
So if I might, couple of things on this. So One of the things that I did was, went back and, because it's easy to do nowadays, is kind of go to the town's regulations and do a search on trees and see everything that pops up. And we're kind of all over the place, existing today, the way, there's certain things in the subdivision rules and regs, there's certain things in zoning and certain things in wetlands protection. So, for what it's worth.
Yeah, and that was kind of the other thing, is that it was kind of sprinkled through a couple different bylaws.
Yeah, and so as you begin to look across the different write-ups or the different bylaws or regulations, one of the things that kind of jumped out to me was different criteria for diameter of the tree and how high above the ground level you're measuring. And subdivision rules and regs might say one thing, zoning would say something else. And so as a developer coming in, you kind of, if you're doing a subdivision, what are you looking at?
Right.
Which criteria am I being asked? So maybe what we could try and do as a function of this is try and normalize some of that language. And at the end of the day, it seems like what we're trying to get at is what kind of tree, how tall might it grow, where on the lot. And so you can say of a certain diameter, X number of inches or feet above ground level, but depending upon what type of tree it is, that could look very different in 10 years or 20 years. And so it's almost like you're, at inception, you're assigning the wrong metric. You're kind of saying, I want it to look like this, but it doesn't allow for the fact that what it is that you're planting may grow to be something very different over time, which kind of gets back to things that are closer to the street. So we just had National Grid come through and they started cutting down trees. They did some on my property, I did one on my property. Because those trees, beech trees, I think they were, over time, had just gotten so large that now they were beginning to come out over the power lines.
Yeah, those are wild trees.
Yeah, they're all over the place. As you drive around, you see all what they left behind. And again, that gets into what that tree was 20 years ago versus what it turned into today, and now it's a problem. Because National Grid's looking at it and saying that thing's gonna take down the lines if we don't get it out of there. To some extent, it backs into kind of how close to the street you want to be for some of these things. Because the closer you are to the street, presumably the closer you are to the power lines. And then the other part of it is,
And the sidewalks.
And the sidewalks, yeah. And then I think the other thing is that you're beginning to get into that tree list that we're talking about.
Of approved trees.
Yeah, and my understanding is that thing doesn't exist today? We don't have that yet?
True guy left the board.
Yeah, it's tree.
Right.
The idea was we're gonna get.
You hired
Yeah.
as a consultant.
You'd be surprised how many people come here with trees you can't plant in Massachusetts. And
Invasive.
pinpoint them, like, you
Yeah.
can't have these, you can't have these.
So I think the idea we had talked about once was having approving basically guidelines that would live with Liz in her office. That's basically a acceptable list of trees and, or at least a list of things you are not allowed to plant.
Right.
So that they can come, they can request that list, and then we can update it as needed on a semi-regular basis.
Most subdivisions nowadays don't have telephone poles.
Oh,
It's all underground.
you can charge, anybody that wants to put arborvitaes in, charge them $10,000 an arborvitae tree.
I love that.
See how many they want to keep putting around
Right.
the town.
Right?
It's the go-to tree.
Or near where the deers are.
Deers, yeah.
They'll be gone.
So, yeah, I think you're absolutely right in identifying all kind of the variations, and what I'd love to do is consolidate these. You know, I don't think it's very far off. But it's just figuring out, all right, if we want them to try to preserve trees, which measurement do we use? Do we use the 5 inches at 4 feet? Do we use the 3.5 inches at 18 inches? You know, exactly what type of tree do we want to preserve? And I'm not talking, a sapling that's 3 years old,
Right.
that's, growing quickly, but more like a mature
Right.
tree that's been around for a while. It's gonna have a diameter of at least, a foot.
It's the Charlie Brown trees that they plant. Those are
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, and if we're going to push this forward, and it makes reference to a list that will be kept with the planning
I'll
board
put it
office.
on the website.
Hmm?
Put it on the website and everybody can look at it.
Yeah, but I mean, if this is going to reference something that doesn't exist, we need to make it exist.
Right, right. Rick, do you know if they have those lists in other communities?
Yeah.
All right. I was gonna say, if you could capture some of those and send them my way, I can then send them to everybody, and you can look at them, and that could be the start, the start of the list,
Okay.
right? If they're using them in other New England communities, at least it's a base for you guys to run from.
I remember having this conversation with Mr.
Apple
Smith,
trees, the whole town.
who has forgotten more about trees than I will ever know.
Right, right, which we may send to him.
And I would solicit his input,
Okay.
because I, based upon some of the things he was saying,
I was thinking of it too.
there may
Like
have
the
been
fire
trees,
shrubs.
may have been trees in the past that were entirely acceptable and everybody thought they were fine. And then roll the clock forward a decade or two and everybody says, under no circumstances can we allow those to be
Right.
planted anymore.
Well, those fire trees, they are the fire shrubs. Yeah.
Yeah, things turn into problems that people didn't anticipate.
Actually, Liz, might be useful to talk to Wayne and see if he has such a list.
Oh, yeah.
And how many times have we seen the Bradford
He
Pales?
may have left
That's a
somewhere.
good-
I'll go, I actually have a file that says trees on it. I'll go in there and look.
If he doesn't have it, he can create it off the
The
top
rest
of
of
his
the
head.
board, I was suggesting that Liz talk to Wayne and see if he has a list of acceptable trees. And Liz was just saying that there's a file in her office called trees, and this might
So I
exist.
can pull that out too.
When we did Century Estates, didn't we come out with approved tree? We got rid of Bradford Pales, and we came out with
Right.
a couple of different versions.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a good idea.
Rick, could I email you the next week or so and just update the language that would, I think,
Absolutely.
make sure it's nice and uniform?
Absolutely.
And if you could send me that too, then I will send it off to town council and just have them make sure that it would be a go, without any additional hard work.
Couple of other questions, just briefly, Rick. Custom grows, 3B,
Yeah.
develop may opt to plant a minimum of 4 trees in a manner that provides additional canopy. So would that number of 4 trees, would that vary based upon how big a lot we were talking about? Or should it?
Where am I?
3B, custom grows.
Canopy of a certain square feet, and as far as enlarging it, if you take a big lot.
Yeah, I mean, four trees is kind of a fixed number.
Yeah, so, we don't have many 20,000 square foot lot subdivisions. So this is definitely more, I think, leaning towards the 30,000 to 40,000 square foot. And I think that's where it gets into, this is the starting point, and if you can come in and say, look, this is a 20,000 square foot lot, you physically can't fit 4 mature 70-foot trees on this lot. Okay, that makes sense, we can get around that. But I want them to come to us with a reason as to why they can't do it. That makes sense.
So you can amend those numbers down by a vote of the board.
Yep. Yeah, I try to word it to make sure it's not like, like asking for a waiver. It's like, this is our bylaw, but we can,
Yeah, there'll be some flexibility. and
there's
discretion.
flexibility built into this.
So,
Kind of it's developers thinking.
And then we kind of
Instead of just.
enter right into that and
So I've
talk too much
actually
about.
You could build
written myself a
3 trees on the
note,
side yard.
to put a copy of that in, I have a subdivision file for all the changes, like the green, the LID stuff that we're gonna change in the subdivision bylaws in the fall.
Yeah.
But also other stuff that people say to me along the way, I'm just throwing it in there.
Okay.
If I see inconsistencies, and then all of those can be made at once, they don't have to be done in a town meeting, it's a vote of the board. So you have to advertise it and then you guys have a public hearing and vote on them.
Okay.
All right.
All right, we're gonna move on to the MBTA.
Before we do that, may
One more, make sure.
I, we kind of launched right into the trees.
Yeah.
And we kind of went through the battery storage. We went over that pretty quickly. So in my mind, that's a pretty significant discussion. We, looked at what the rules and regs that some of the other towns had put in. Town council told us that there were a couple of communities, Carver and Medway, that had issued a moratorium. And as I was saying to Liz, and I sent her the links, so it took 2 minutes to go out onto YouTube and find Carver's committee that they had established, and Medway's committee that they established. And I didn't have the time to sit for an hour and 30 minutes to watch meetings, but they're there. And you could see that there was an awful lot of discussion going on and an awful lot of thought being put into this. For my part, I would be really hesitant to launch into adopting somebody else's bylaw. And I would think that the better approach may be for us to do what Carver and Medway and towns such as those had done, where we issue a moratorium and give ourselves some time to kind of figure out exactly what we want something like this to look like.
You have time. We don't have anything in our bylaw that speaks to it, so it's not allowed.
It's denied by default.
Denied by default. We have a lot of interest, which is why I have put it on here, because you guys are the ones that,
All right.
I mean, somebody can do it by petition, but you guys would need to make a recommendation to town meeting. So,
All right, that changes the discussion entirely.
Right.
I didn't realize that it
right,
was denied
there's,
by
where,
default.
we are in no rush, we are absolutely in no rush. And we can schedule a separate meeting to do a presentation and have a conversation, do
Okay.
whatever you guys want to do. I don't want anybody not to feel comfortable with any of this.
There's interest?
Hmm?
Is interest, Abington
Yes.
specifically?
Yes. Yes.
I would like to see some more technical information regarding ownership.
Okay.
I don't know enough about it. I think it's gonna be, I'd like to know, they've gotta be able to attach it to something. Is it something that's gonna be very specific where it's gotta go
Right.
in order to attach it to the grid? Those kind of questions, I guess, is what I was sort of looking for. And it's great that we're in no rush, to Rick's concern, I don't think we know enough about it.
Oh,
But if there's interest, I'd like to.
Right, I agree. Right.
If there's interest.
but there is, that, and so
Yeah.
instead of having to scramble,
Right.
because something, you know what I mean,
Right.
somebody says we want to do this.
And maybe that's, depending upon the technical aspect,
Right.
the hired consultant to.
Right.
If I just determine it has to go here to connect to the grid, I don't know that.
All right, so why don't I do this? I will,
Is that, did you look at Carver at all? Is that what they're doing? Does it seem?
They're one of the ones that's in the, they've issued a moratorium, which is kind of where my thinking came from, that if you don't
And-
issue a moratorium, then somebody can go ahead and start.
part of their problem is they did not have a bylaw. They only changed their table of use. So people could, you know what I mean? So it was like, okay, it's allowed here, here, and here, but there were no guidelines on what was allowed. So that's why both of those communities have a moratorium, because
Yeah.
they only had it in their table of use. And they had no
Medway, if I
bylaw.
remember right, they were reacting because somebody had come in and was planning to build a sizable storage, battery storage unit, and they panicked because they had no way to respond to it.
Because it was allowed by right in that district.
You would think
Right.
these companies would be trying to educate, if it's something that's up and coming, they
Right.
would be trying to educate
Right.
the towns.
I think this whole problem with lithium batteries
Right.
is really something that's just kind of
Yeah.
exploded, for lack of a better word, in the past couple of years. All of a
Was it
sudden,
final over the weekend, they said it was from lithium batteries.
In Brockton.
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
All right, so I'm gonna reach out to the gentleman from Crimson Power that Scott suggested. He said he has a wealth of information about this.
Yep.
And I'll also reach out to the fire chief again, because I know they have gone to, for lack of a better, trainings and seminars or
Yeah, I'll bet.
whatever on how this all works, and I can ask him to join the board that night
Yeah, that'd be
and
great.
maybe provide his input. And do you want that as a separate meeting, or you want it as part of your February meeting? Because any public hearings would have to be in March, so,
I would just keep it as part of the week.
all right. Do you want to meet at 5:30? Could everybody do that?
Can we get in, what do you think timeframe on presentation's gonna be?
I think whatever time
No, I mean, is it guy gonna be here for an hour, or is he gonna be, but,
Um,
you know what I mean?
Probably whatever we tell them.
I
Yeah,
guess.
right? I mean, do you want me to limit it to 30 minutes, and then you guys can have a 15 minutes at that point for a Q&A, and then you can discuss it later on after the rest of the
I'd be inclined to
meeting?
do it for an hour, and if we don't use a full hour, then
All right.
that's fine.
Do you want to meet at 5? I mean, we've done that before for
What's
working.
going on in February that is concerning you?
Oh, nothing, it's just, no, I want to give you your hour, because Sean Riley said he's dropping off 2 other projects. And I can't remember them now. And 657 Bedford Street potentially will be ready. It's up to you, I don't care.
I can do any time.
All right.
I'm fine.
You want
I
to meet
defer
at
to
6
folks
still?
who have to work.
It's fine, 5 o'clock's fine for me.
Yeah, I can manage, it's up to you.
All right, so let's
Is
do
it
this,
fine?
let's do this at 5.
5? All right. And just think, if it doesn't all take that long, we'll be out early.
Yeah.
I wish I could remember what Sean's dropping off.
Yeah, I can't imagine it's anything in the way this 657 Bedford Street's been going, they're not gonna be ready. But I can't say they're not gonna be, that's a discussion, couple of minutes, I guess.
Right.
Keep kicking that can down the road.
All right, let's move along. Liz has given us an action plan for MBTA communities, VA guidelines and stuff like that.
I just want to let you all know that I amended a piece of that this morning. Which got cut off in my copy, of course, because it was too much language. But I added, under the please briefly describe any relevant strategies, goals, or objectives, and the work that has been done to date. I added into that all the multi-unit dwellings that have already been approved down there. So I added the 2 40Bs that have been approved but not yet built, and then the one across the street, Mr. Zaborski's 10-unit, and then also included that there are a multitude of 3 to 6 unit dwellings kind of scattered well within a half a mile on Center Ave and Summer Street and Progress Street. So I just wanted to let you know that I added that stuff at the bottom of 2.1A. I'm also having OCPC look at this. I think I told you that in my email. Dottie, and I'm not gonna say her last name because
Fulcinity.
yeah, her, is reviewing it, and she is gonna be, I think, our technical assistance person. We did receive grant money for technical assistance on this, so I think they're all still sorting a lot of that out. But I think she's gonna be the person to assist us on that. But as soon as I get everybody's, does anybody here have any changes they wanna make?
Great job.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
As soon as I hear back from Scott and Dottie, I will submit it so we will be compliant. It's due the 31st.
The one question that I do have on this, Liz,
Yep.
is,
My maps,
yeah, where did these come from? Where did these maps?
a friend of mine did them. Literally Jody down in the assessor's office. Because those have been options that were discussed, and I just wanted to provide to them what the board has looked at to date.
Okay.
Because there have been discussions of going from the train station up to Target, and there have been discussions of the train station up and including Center Ave.
Is that online?
Hmm?
Is that map?
No, it's not.
Okay.
It's not online.
And so these two aren't definitive.
Absolutely not.
This is just what we have to do to
This is
satisfy the filing
right. They
requirement.
want to know what we've been discussing. What has the board discussed? And I've also told them that we've received technical assistance, and there's all those dates in the back.
Yeah.
So no, this was just uploaded as, these were places we have looked at. And when I was filling this out, something for everybody to think of, they asked if we had a commuter rail station in another community that had
Yes.
land.
Yes.
So I did answer that, and it's
South
South
Weymouth.
Weymouth,
Yeah,
and I think the Abington land is within a half a mile of that.
yeah. What are the implications of that?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't
that
know.
wasn't clear either.
Right,
Yeah, that's a little fuzzy still.
right? So
Because technically Weymouth could make its district South Weymouth,
right,
and, yeah, because it has multiple stations in it.
Right.
You know, part of our land under the air base is within that half mile of the South Weymouth station. And we currently have our rules, or our bylaws is that we don't want housing at South Weymouth, but we approved that 6 years ago at this point, so we want to change it and instead put our housing there.
and while we're talking about South Weymouth, just to let you guys know, the Board of Selectmen are meeting tomorrow night, and they are getting an update on South Weymouth Naval Air Station from our representative, but I think the new developer is coming with him to update the board, I think. I'm not sure, but anyway, you can either watch it or you can come to the meeting and hear what they have to say. But that was actually a question I was going to save for our technical assistance person. Would that be something the board could consider as well?
Is that a half mile still?
Yeah. Oh, wait, and actually, I don't know.
This is the one that shows that includes.
Yeah, it goes
Abington
into Center Ave. I think it's over that.
Okay.
We weren't measuring, we were just kind of trying to show them the general area.
One thing that I would kind of like to see is if that represents the train station and our radius is a half mile.
Oh, the half mile. All right.
What is that look like?
So
So
that's,
if- you know,
that's
this
in
is-
that toolbox that I sent you earlier. We can get, remember I think I sent everybody the link of the tools. I think being able to do that is in there. I have not explored that.
I spent a little bit of time looking at it, and I
It's
gave up
very
real fast.
overwhelming.
Yeah.
And there were not really any instructions. I think they have provided like a guide on how to use it. Again, I've been busy doing this and
Yeah.
not playing with
It-
the tool.
It involved downloading some things.
Right,
And when you
and I had trouble downloading
when you
them.
downloaded them and looked at them,
Right.
it was like, what am I supposed to do with this?
Right.
So.
Right, they were landing in my inbox and they were not making any sense.
I gave up pretty quick.
Right.
The new governor did talk about this in her inaugural, and is still seems to be very supportive of the law. I would be curious is if she will be proposing any changes to the regulations or guidelines. Do you think that's something we could ask through our state senator, who's the chairman of housing?
Yep.
Just before we go down any road too far, if they're gonna be proposing anything in the next 6 months, I'd like to know.
Right. And this doesn't have to be done till 2024, so. Okay.
Any further discussion on this?
Nope.
All right, discussion on master plan goals. Anybody got anything?
I do. So, in its infant stages, you know the land the town bought at town meeting last fall, the land out here, out there. We had a very early stage meeting with a consulting firm who they did the Safe Street path down at the end of the high school down to Washington Street. And we're looking to apply for a grant for a design for a walking, like a shared path that would sort of connect the two campuses and then back to Broad Meadow. Overall plan, eventually getting to Ames Knoll. And overall, trying to connect the town's open space to Ames Knoll, like kind of have a connector around town with signage and bike paths and stuff like that. So that's very far away, but it's in both the open space plan and the master plan. Open space plan has expired, and I have applied for CPA money to get that updated, and then we were informed that we could apply through the DLTA. So I did apply, I sent them the concept stuff that they asked for, so we'll know in mid-February if we're gonna get any money for it. It kind of, I mean, not that it doesn't matter, but CPA, I think CPA hasn't voted anything, but I think they were looking relatively favorably on funding that anyway. So I think at the end of the day, it'll be a matter of whether we ask for like $30,000 or $10,000 from CPA. So.
What's DTLA?
District Local Technical Assistance. This is something that Old Colony Planning Council administers.
Yep, they get money from the state, right?
Right.
Yeah. And it's for a variety of different projects, and they kind of outline what all of that is, so.
Do we need to, or would it be helpful to have a count of students who use kind of the Barry Road cut through on a daily basis? I know not all would be impacted by this path, but a portion of them.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it can't hurt, because all of that information, like Scott and I are writing the narrative for Abington, and then they'll do the map work and all the other, it's an extensive grant application, so it'll be nice to have them do most of it. So, I think that's it on master plan goals.
Site plan review that was continued, but I want to continue that to next month.
There's a letter.
This is,
We're gonna kick this thing down the road for extended period of time.
oh wait, which one's 657? I was thinking it was that development.
That's the one next to
Oh,
the
it is. the
dental and physical therapy, whatever's there now on the corner of Shar Ave and Route 18.
Because I thought they just came for what we thought about it back then. Because it wasn't finished.
So the motion's,
I've come to a couple of meetings.
motion's been made to continue this second.
Second.
All those in favor?
I
Aye, so will be continued to the February meeting. I just want to take this opportunity to plug something that I'm involved with. Citizens Planner Training Collaborative is having their, actually the first time in 3 years, we're having a conference out at Holy Cross in Worcester on March 18th, I think, Saturday. And it's a great conference to go to. A lot of topics are covered, and we have the hot topics and everything else. So it's still being planned as far as nailing down the topics and stuff like that, but we have an idea of what we're going to have. And I'm sure that if members wanted to attend,
We have funding for that.
we have funding for that. It's a great Saturday. And, you get to interact with people from across the state. And we do give you lunch. And there's like a light breakfast in the morning and stuff like that,
Are
too.
you part of that?
Yes. Yeah, I'm on the board. I'm on the board. I've been on the board of CTPC forever, seems like. But yeah, it's great to be involved with.
When is it?
It's
March 18th.
March 18th, whatever Saturday that is. It's about an hour and a half from here. And if you drive like I drive, and it's worth it.
An hour if you drive like I do.
Go ahead. Okay.
30 minutes?
No comments. All right, does anybody have anything else they want to talk about tonight?
Is there a letter we need to talk about?
They already talked about it.
Kind of. I have lots to say. Some of it I can say in public, and some of it would probably have to be done in executive session. So,
It didn't. Just the way she wrote it up was already, you already just said he's okay. Why are you going on with the letter? He said this. Done. That's it.
for the record,
Yeah.
I talked about the need to increase our commercial tax base. And one of the ways to do that was to hire a town planner so that we could get more tax, to grow our tax base so that when we need more money for stuff coming down the road, we would have it. That's the gist of it.
Okay. What was the details of it, getting everybody riled up?
It just sounded like she was concerned that it was not, I didn't see the meeting. It just sounded like she was concerned that it was going beyond what they were doing. That's all I got from
A
it.
little bit, but it was relation to the dropping commercial tax base in town, that we're now down to 7%.
But the meeting was just to discuss whether or not
Yep.
to split the tax rate.
So we discussed for years.
Hey, the good news is multi-units went up by some outrageous amount of money.
Did you want to put the McHugh Circle on the agenda for next week?
Yes.
McHugh Circle, down the end, they've clear cut everything back there. Down, when you go down McHugh and you go up the little driveway.
Okay. Yes, I have actually had a conversation with town council, and because it's not on the agenda, I can't ask you guys to take some action tonight, but I was gonna put it on there anyway, because I need you to take a vote to require something. I mean, we actually, right now at this moment, we don't have any review fees because it belonged to other people. So Rick sent me pictures, and my other question was, are we sure it's not the other person who owns, somebody did buy that other land?
Oh, from Mr.
Yes,
Lakeman?
yes,
Interesting.
yes. So that land did get sold last year sometime.
So, I guess we can't really discuss it.
No, so what I can tell you is a board member has provided me with pictures that the land has been flagged, like wetland flagged, and that land has been cut closer to Grant's Place than would be necessary.
A good deal of cutting, like someone went in there and whoosh.
Hey, gone. You drive up the dirt thing and then it's just, you can
So
see
is
it's.
it a cease and desist from another board?
So I think I can now ask for a cease and desist from downstairs.
That's not coming from conservation.
I don't know,
Okay.
My question to town council was, because other responses have been, if a plan is already approved with stormwater management, then they don't have to go through the current stormwater management bylaw. But they do have to comply, as long as it's not built. They don't have to come back before the board and do everything again, but we have to make sure that what got approved complies with our current bylaw, because nothing's been constructed yet. So I got that answer today. The problem is I don't have any engineering review fees to send it out to anybody. You know what I mean? To send the 20-year-old plan out to see if it complies with today's bylaw. So that's what I'm gonna put on, is to ask you guys to vote to require that. And then the next thing is I'm gonna reach out to the current owner of the property and ask what they're doing out there. And in the meantime, I'm also gonna ask downstairs to go take a look. I don't know this for fact, but I believe that the new owner had a pre-construction meeting with the building department. I'm not sure who else was invited, or conservation.
Well, as long as they got somebody involved.
I'm not sure, I'll confirm that tomorrow. but I'm not sure they can go out and clear cut that it would be in compliance with our current stormwater management, MS4 bylaw.
I guess what I was leading to, they don't need something from us to do something about it.
No, I don't. I'm gonna take that in a different direction. I will need you guys to vote on something next month. But yeah, I got all of that late this afternoon, so I didn't have an opportunity to do anything today, but it's first on the agenda for tomorrow.
All right. Motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second?
Again,
All in favor?
we just have to sign the plans.
Yes, please. Thank you.